Welcome to the 7th episode of season 11 of the Comm-UNITY podcast. For those that have been with us the past 6 episodes, it's been quite a journey, an interesting journey, diving deep into what the Comm-UNITY podcast is about, what generosity and giving are about. And one of the most interesting pieces that we haven't talked about much is leadership. For those that are familiar with leadership, very popular quote by John C. Maxwell talks about everything rises and falls on leadership. Well, this morning I'm privileged to host a key member of the CivSource Africa team, a passionate, amazing, eloquent leader at CivSource Africa. She holds the vital piece on leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, our dear listeners, today join me and welcome Allen Asimwe. Hi Allen, how are you?
Hi Antonio. With such an introduction, I think I need to clap for myself. Yay! Allen, you're most welcome to season 11 of the Comm-UNITY podcast. But yes, Antonio, thank you very much for hosting me today.
So, who's Allen? Our dear listeners would like to know who this Allen is and what she does at CivSource Africa.
Well, I am a Ugandan, a citizen of this country, most beautiful country, I believe, and I guess that's why we're called the Pearl of Africa. So I'm privileged and honored to be coming from this part of the world. My name is Allen Asimwe. I work at CivSource, just like Antonio has already mentioned. I support the leadership program, but I also identify as a gender enthusiast because I am passionate about women advancement and gender in general. At CivSource, we nurture and support leaders through our Grow Mentorship and Coaching program, but we're also passionate about the wellness of leaders. And so through our experience retreat, we want to create a platform and a space where leaders can come, learn, relax, rejuvenate, because as most of us who are in the space of civil society already know that the work that we do can be emotionally and physically draining and exhausting. And so our experience retreat is a space where they come to fill their cups. Like the other quote goes, you cannot pour from an empty cup. So we want to be that haven where leaders come and be able to refill their cups and go back to the world to serve, because leadership is based on service. So you serve others, and you can only serve others if you have something within yourself to be able to serve. So that's what I do. But the other important piece that we host and provide to leaders within the space and the sector in general is work around change readiness. And because we come from a place and an appreciation that change is happening, and so managing transitions and successions within any institution and at the leadership level is very key. And we do that through our Change Ready initiative. And lastly is the Lead Bench, which is really a platform that brings leaders to be able to summit and relate and connect as leaders, but also talk about the contextual issues that are happening within the sector, how they can best negotiate. I know that CivSource is already doing some work around decolonizing aid and maybe rethinking and shaping aid, because some people are not comfortable with the word decolonizing, but it's really to just, as leaders, to talk about what that means for them and how they can best negotiate, because aid is a negotiation. So how leaders can negotiate and be able to do the things that really are meaningful to the communities they serve. So yes, that's
Wow.
it.
A masterclass of an introduction. So if you're a listener out there and you're hosting a program on gender, Allen is a go-to person for you. That's the Kalango. Are you a leader in an organization and you're seeking to, engage the team on a retreat, seeking to engage partners on a retreat, Allen is the go-to person for you. So please reach out to us at CivSource Africa and ask for Allen. She will definitely share the details with you. So, we're here for the podcast. Before we dive deep. So, Allen, you hosted season 7, an amazing season on interviewing different leaders from across Uganda on the different aspects within which they engage community and how they leverage their leadership platforms to advance the cause of philanthropy. So, in a nutshell, what was that like, season 7, to you?
Well, season was quite, did I say season? Season 7 was quite an interesting journey, and it gave CivSource and I an opportunity to get into the minds of leaders within the civil society sector. Important to note on this episode is that we only targeted leaders that had been part of our experience retreat. So, well, they were a representation of civil society organizations in Uganda, but not fully deeply into the broader representation, because I'm certain that there are so many leaders that we left out there. But so, yeah, we wanted to get into their minds and understand the role of leadership when it comes to community philanthropy and how that is embraced within the work that they do. We wanted to also query on whether leadership was an important detail of how philanthropy is done in communities, and if that is a thing that we need to advance. And so, with the conversations that we had with so many leaders, I think it came out strongly that leadership was key and an important role when it comes to how philanthropy is done in communities, how it is advanced, and even how people get to give, because as you give, the issues of accountability, responsiveness, and only a great leader can be able to be accountable and responsive as the community give, as also they receive givings, let me call them givings, as they receive that from other people. And like we always define philanthropy here at CivSource as talent, treasure, and resources. No, 3 T's: talent, time, and treasure. And so for all that, it needs to be accountable and needs to be driven by a leader. And of course, so many of them shared stories of how they have experienced community giving back of their time, of their talent, of their treasure, and they highlighted the need to be able to be accountable, the need for a person to drive, especially for initiatives that required community mobilization and things like that. They needed someone to run with the thing, because for anything that has no leadership anyway, like you said in your introduction, everything rises and falls on leadership. And so even philanthropy in itself, if it did not have better leadership, I am certain that maybe we wouldn't have made the strides that we have made over the years with giving within the global south of this continent.
Okay. So again, to dive deep into what you've said, were there any maybe 1 or 2 individuals or comments from the different guests that you hosted that maybe could have stood out for you during the season? I know you hosted a couple, about 10 leaders, yeah? But if there's 1 or 2 and the broader themes that you think stood out, would you point to any of those?
I will point to my first guest that I hosted when I hosted the season 7 of the community podcast, and that was Olivia Biemera. I hope I pronounced that right. And the title of that episode was Taking a Chance to Give Through Applying Self. And for me, that stood out because here, as you discuss leadership in one of the classes, the sessions that we host within our leadership products here, said one of the facilitators mentioned that if you are a leader and you're walking and then there's no one following you, then you need to question yourself on what you're doing. So Olivia in that episode tried to bring out the element of giving through self and applying yourself, that people follow what they see, but also you need to lead by example. So if you're advancing philanthropy or mobilizing for anything, and you as the leader, you're not doing anything, then how do you expect other people to be able to give back to that initiative that you're, advancing or trying to sell in the minds of other people? So the element of leading and giving and applying yourself through the whole concept of giving, the whole concept of philanthropy is quite key. Yeah. And I think the other was Wakib Bunya, the CEO of Open Space Society, Open Space Initiative, yes. And the conversation was around shaping opinions on community giving. Again, I know that is some of the work the philanthropy team here at CivSource does through telling the stories of community giving, and the work that you're doing with community foundations. It's again from a place of trying to shape opinions on how giving is defined from this part of the world where we come in, on how giving is defined in Uganda, because so many people believe that giving or philanthropy in its nature should be a top bottom sort of approach from those who have so much high net worth individuals who are giving back to most vulnerable communities. And so the opinion around giving within communities, giving back to their own communities, people giving time, talent, treasure within, that has oftentimes not been viewed as philanthropy during the COVID period. And I'm certain you have partly talked about that in the other episodes, is that we saw so many Ugandans give to, community needs, community drives in all kinds of ways. And oftentimes we don't view that as philanthropy. People gave their time, people gave food, people reached out to the sick, in so many ways. For those with the lockdowns happening, people were, transporting others. For those that had, what were they called? The car stickers, people would offer to transport other people, take them to hospital because they had the privilege of having a car sticker, something small like that, but it's quite key. And so the work that they were doing, and the work that CivSource is also doing, is to, shape the narrative around philanthropy, how philanthropy is viewed. You don't have to wait for someone, I don't know, from the part of the world where you do not come from, to come and, respond to a community cause of maybe a neighbor that is lacking food, a child that is not going to school, children that don't have shoes. We don't have to wait for, those that really have a lot to come and intervene. There are things that the community can be able to do. And so, that was very key for me, that as we even continue to do this work, is to, continue to shape the narrative around philanthropy, especially how people view it and see it, and for people to appreciate themselves as givers. And then it's September, September to remember, where where we gather givers. I'm sure we'll be able to get so many people that define themselves as givers, that see themselves as givers, because there are so many. So to be able to shape that, and for people to appreciate that they are givers and they need to continue giving without even being called upon, that there are so many Uganda problems that need to be resolved by Ugandans. Yes, that don't need an outsider to come and resolve this for us.
So thank you very much, Alan. Alan talked about a program at CivSource Africa where, leaders and executives of different organizations are trained, the Grow Leadership Program. So if you're out there and you're listening and you want to know more about that, again, you could check on any of our social media platforms, check our website at CivSource Africa, and find out about the Grow Leadership Program, a program that, explores different aspects of leadership and how you can grow and develop in those. So, Alan, you mentioned something interesting about leadership. And so the next question really is about leaders being key individuals in advancing, philanthropy. I know that you had chipped one or two ideas on, we don't have to wait for someone to come in there, but a leader as a strategic individual, or a leader as a person who can advance generosity in their community. What are some of those key aspects you would point to?
So it's great that you mentioned that a leader becomes a pillar, is a key contact person in everything. And in this case, we'll relate it to philanthropy and giving. And I would like to say some people, well, they are born leaders, others have to work towards it. And when you bring it back to a context of leading within the sector, even within the private sector, you need to be able to give back as a leader to your team, either through teaching them, through providing them with an opportunity. There's a lot that you give that oftentimes is not in monetary terms. And so that brings me to a place where that as a leader, you need to be even selfless with yourself and everything that you have, your knowledge, your time, even your resources, that you need to be selfless enough to be able to reach out and give to another person. And some of the things, again, they are not counted. You know that at one of our gathering of givers, the theme was recount, account, and count. Yes, and so many things that leaders do in this environment. There are things that cannot be counted, but yet you have to be able to give above and beyond of yourself with the things that we talked about earlier, of your time and talent and treasure. But also because giving equals to getting. It's an equivalent to getting. So when you give, for example, as a leader, you're leading by example, you're giving back through your knowledge and your experience. There is a benefit of getting back, and that is through how maybe people will perform. If you have led by example and given by example, your team will give back in the same measure. So there is a benefit to that, especially if then you're at that position. But then also important to notice that as you lead, you need to lead the way. Yeah, like Jesus came and led the way for those who are Christians, but you have to lead the way and show people how things are done, be able to teach people what is expected. But then people need to be able to see that you preach in you. So you must be able to lead the way as a leader. And in the space of philanthropy, you must walk the talk, but not only in the space of philanthropy, everywhere you need to be able to walk the talk as a leader.
Wow. So thank you very much, Ellen. That's very interesting. I know that season 7 is a very rich season. And if you are asking yourself questions as you listen in, this is a good time to just pause, go back to any of our social media platforms at CivSource Africa and listen into season 7. Quite a number of episodes. I think there were about 10 interesting and diverse leaders that Alan interviewed. They dive deep into different aspects on community philanthropy, on leadership, and on what it means for each individual to step up and step out and do the best they can to give. So Alan, I know, and we've mentioned one or two of these, but CivSource Africa is passionate about leadership. And I know that within your docket are a couple of items that speak to growing leadership, that speak to, helping leaders in civil society and even beyond on how they can position themselves better in the work that they do. Maybe I know you had highlighted this at the start, but just to pick into one or two things that you feel stand out in these leadership programs, and how our listeners can benefit by, registering and being part of this.
Okay, thank you, Antonio. I'll start from the point of everyone is a leader. Oftentimes I've been asked, especially when calls for most of our programs go out, people ask, am I a leader? Do I qualify? And our definition of leadership at CivSource is that leadership begins from a point of self. That you are a leader before your title, before a job placement position, but the ability to be able to lead yourself as a person. Number one, that already automatically makes you a leader. The ability to responsibly lead yourself and make decisions for yourself, that makes you a leader. And so everyone qualifies with such a definition. Everyone qualifies to be part of our programs. I would also like to say that because, leadership it's not a one-off journey. It's a continuous journey of growth. And so I would encourage every leader, they'll use the word leader, not every person, every leader out there to consider continuous growth and development. And CivSource offers a space for that, and that is through our mentorship and coaching program, where we support leaders, to continuously advance themselves. And we focus on 5 modules, and one is knowing yourself to grow yourself. Because again, we must constantly check where we are lacking, where the gaps are, where we need to improve, and redefine who we are, because we evolve as human beings. And so it's important for you to always revisit that area of your life and be able to grow. The other is, knowing your brand, to grow your brand. And that is split into 2, to look at personal branding and institutional branding, because most people then are placed in organizations, in companies, and so it's important to appreciate and know what your brand is as a person and how that relates into the institutional brand that you're working with. Because again, it's working with, because people think if I'm at middle management level or I don't have, a title of CEO, then I do not qualify. But the brand that you carry with even the program and department that you lead has an implication on how the organization, thrives. And so then the other is knowing your people to grow your people, because relationships count. Building relationships and recognizing them and growing those really counts. And as a leader, you need to be able to grow others, into better versions of themselves. And then the other is knowing your money to grow your money. Oftentimes, especially Ugandans, are ashamed to say that they love money, to say that they know money, but so many things run around money. And so we provide that module first from a point of self again, that you must be able to understand money as a leader for yourself and be a good steward of that money, and then get into the organization finances to be able to grow those finances. So you first grow your personal finances and then get into the institutional finances. And then lastly, the module around legacy, footprint, and succession. In 2020, CivSource did a study to try to understand this whole thing around transitions and succession planning. And from that report, we could tell that so many organizations actually don't live to see their next birthday when a transition happens. And that is because transitions are managed poorly, but also because as a country, I think we are afraid to talk about transitions in all its nature. I know Ugandans who are listening to this podcast are already running somewhere. But yeah, I'll not get into that detail. But as a country, we have not, history tells for itself that we have not managed transitions well. And this has even trickled down into the individual and how we even run organizations, because as a country we have not managed transitions. That's what we have seen. It has become part of us. And so when a person says, when a statement around transition and succession is said, people feel like either they are being pushed away or, it just doesn't give a good taste in so many people's perspectives. And so, the transition is just a thing that people never want to get to. And yet we have to be change ready, because the report really indicated that these transitions happen either planned, unplanned, expected, unexpected. It can just happen. And so if you want to leave a legacy behind, if you want to thrive, how better are you planning for for change and transitions at either level. It can be transition at leadership level. It can be transition at department. It can be transition within the ecosystem that we operate. I mean, you are in children's rights, and then maybe there's been a shift. We no longer want to do work around children's rights. And so how prepared and agile are you as an institution and as a leader to transition within that ecosystem that we operate? I mean, there's been a whole talk around the shrinking space within the sector. How are we ready for that transition? Because it's happening. So if the space is shrinking, how ready are we to respond to that? So yeah, we want to prepare our leaders that come to join us in the GROW program and other products that we serve at CivSource, that, you need to prepare for transition, even your own personal transition as a person. I've spoken to quite a number of some lawyers. We have quite a number of them here at CivSource. I mean, people, for example, think of a will. When you tell someone, hey, do a will, they think that they are going to die the next day. And yet you need to leave your estate in order for anything. I mean, anything could happen, And so, just putting it out there doesn't mean that you're going to die. So it's the same thing, that as a leader, as a program manager, program coordinator, that as you're in that position, you need to be thinking of change for anything. Am I prepared as a person? But is my team prepared? But have I left everything in order for those that will come after me? Or even when I'm away on leave, I mean, I guess maybe that contributes heavily to why people are extremely tired, because they don't take leave. Again, because they are not ready for change and transition. For when you step away for a week or two, what happens? Do you go with the whole department? Because it's so many of those things that we talk about within being change ready and leaving a legacy and footprint. And this program is just to prepare you and open your mind on the possibility of that. The other I will emphasize is our work around the experience retreat, because we know that if a leader is not okay, then the work they do cannot be well. I mean, you coming to the space, you don't leave your other self at home or in another space. So you come with your whole self and your problems and your stress into the workspace or the environment that you're operating in. And because you come like that, if you're not okay, it's like a virus. You will spread it to other people just because, you're not well-grounded, your body is not aligned and not in the right place. And so because we're cognizant of that, we provide a platform. Everyone needs a moment to stop and reflect, a break. Even our cars that we drive, we take them for service. All machines actually. They break down, they go for service and come back better to work. So I would term our experience retreat as that place. It's a garage that you go to refill yourself, re-energize, and come back ready to serve others.
Wow, amazing programs and products at CivSource Africa. So if you're listening in and you picked up one or two things that you would want more information about, you want to know, you want to be part of, just check out any of our social media platforms and ask for Alan. Any one of the platforms that you reach out to and say, hey, I listened to the podcast and I had some interesting things that Alan said. I would want to talk to Alan. You'd be directed to Alan, and she would share more with you. I know that these products can also be tailor-made for organizations, it's a good thing for you to reach out and say, you know what, I think the organization I'm a part of or I'm leading is going through a trying time, and we need to be walked with on this journey or taken through a product or a concept that could help us. Feel free to buzz Alan, and definitely this would be very interesting. So Alan, as we conclude, the final question is around what your thoughts are. If there's a leader listening in today that is wondering, how, or an individual that is saying, how do I use my gift of leadership or my position? I know we say leadership is not entirely about positions, but how do I use the platform that I have to continue giving, We talked about the 3 T's, my time, my talent, my treasure, which we refer to as money. How do I use what I have? What would be your final words to that listener who is saying, how do I start where I am and just, explore giving and generosity?
So how do you start from where you are? Already, if you're privileged with a position, at any institution or organization, you already have a platform. And I think for me, my word to you is to go back to what you're passionate about. What are you passionate about as a person, as a human being placed into that position of leadership within that structure, within that organization? What are you passionate about? And so there's so many causes to give to. So if children are your passion, if education is your passion, if disability work and vulnerable persons and marginalized community is what you're passionate about, you will find your niche. Take a moment, think what you're passionate about, and the answers will be right there. Will be there for you then to figure out, then how do I use my position as a leader? Because leadership comes with influence. So you're privileged with that position to even influence others. You have so many that you're leading that look up to you. And so you can be able to influence them to support your cause and drive your cause. But also, it's to rethink how you're leading, because giving back could be even within the community that you're serving. How much time are you giving to the people that you're leading? Are you giving them more time? Are you understanding what they are struggling with? Do they need someone to talk to? Do they, we usually run to meet other problems out there or other calls out there. And yet the calls are within our environment that we're already in. So it's just to look within and see, within this space, with the position I have, what can I do as a leader? Do I have to, invest in building relationships with my team? Do I invest in, giving back in terms of knowledge? Do I, invest in terms of, it's just to think through what are the possible problems that are around you within your immediate circle, and then expand it out to the other people in the community. But don't forget, from where I started from, that it's just to, have a reflection within yourself on what things that you're passionate about. I know so many of us could make excuses of, we don't have time, we are quite so busy, but there is a lot that you can do as a leader. But as a leader, there's a lot that you can do. But important for you to note that as a leader, you are in a privileged position and a position of influence. And so it's important for you to be able to give back of your time, treasure, and talent as a leader. Yeah, in all possible ways that make sense to you, of course.
Wow. Thank you very much, Alan. Any other words, any final words for our listeners, aside from leadership, words on community, on philanthropy, any thoughts you'd want to?
Yeah, because there was some time back when we were having conversations around the definition of what community is. So I'd like to take this opportunity to remind leaders out there that community is not very far away from where you are, where you live, where you do your work every day. Community is not very far away from your immediate circle and surrounding. So it's for you to look deeply within that community and see what you can be able to give back.
Wow, it's been a pleasure hosting you this morning, Alan. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on leadership and philanthropy.
Thank you very much for having me, Antonio.
Wow. Dear listeners, just a reminder for those that are leaders in different organizations, those that are interested in a leadership program, are you a CEO and you're thinking about transition and what that looks like? Feel free to reach us out at CivSource Africa for very dynamic and unique products on leadership and growth and mentorship. Have a great day.